Great. And Sarah, of course, is going to do the presentation about Erie Bird Observatory. And then at the end, you can ask her questions by either raising your hand if you're familiar with how to do that, or put a question in the chat box. I'm going to open the chat box so that I can watch it. And I guess that's it. All right, let me introduce the Erie Bird Observatory people, especially Sarah, because she's going to be doing the talking. She's been the director at Erie Bird Observatory, and she's been working with birds here, oh my gosh, I guess you would say for decades. Let me admit a few more people here. Hi, Andrew. We're getting started because we had a Zoom problem. Well, anyways, they started the Erie Bird Observatory about 3 years ago. And she has 2 assistant directors with her, Mary Birdsong and Laura Marie Koich, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. So Sarah, I think we're good to go. What I'm going to do is keep an eye on the chat box and see if people need to be admitted. And again, I apologize for all of you who had to wait, but I'm so glad it finally got started. Okay.
I'm going to try sharing my screen, but somebody tell me if you're not seeing the correct view of it, because it's entirely possible. Let's make sure you've permitted me to share my screen, Sue.
I sure.
Sue, you need to enable a screen sharing.
Let me go to you and I will click that. I can make you a Lord in heaven. Okay, security. Okay, it says participants are allowed to share screen. It's let me check it off here. How's that?
I got it now. That's good. I'm going to share that one.
And can I ask people to mute yourself if you're not muted at this point? Thanks.
Okay, how does that look to you guys? What are you seeing? Are you seeing the introductory slide?
We see the introductory screen. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep,
perfect.
good.
Okay, this is a little bit of a last minute talk, and this is a test run of the Zoom system for Presque Audubon. So it's not unexpected that there might be a few wrinkles. And so I think it's very daring and brave of Sue to take this on and be willing to hang herself out there with trying to master this new technology. Good job, Sue. So, and also this is a little bit thrown together by me. I know a lot of people are familiar with our name, I hope, but probably aren't really aware of what all we do. And so this is a talk that's a bit of an overview of various programs that we are working on. And we are a very young organization. And so, but I'll get to that in a minute. So this is everything you ever wanted to know about Erie Bird Observatory. Tonight, I'll be speaking for a lot of it, but Mary Birdsong will speak for part of it. And she, of course, is a Presque Audubon board member. We do have other people who work for Erie Bird Observatory, and I'll introduce them at various times during the talk. They won't be speaking tonight, but I have their pictures in here, so you'll see who they are. And some of you probably know them already anyway. Our mission, just as an overview, is that Erie Bird Observatory is dedicated to fostering enthusiasm for birds and conservation through ornithological research and public engagement. So we feel that birds are a great gateway to all of nature and conservation, and doing research on them helps us really pin down what the important factors are that help birds persist and thrive in our modern world. And it's very important to us to engage the public in understanding about these things, because the public and people are vital to helping birds in terms of protecting them legally, financially, just physically maintaining habitat for them rather than paving it all over. So people are a huge part of the equation, and it's important to engage people and help them understand and appreciate birds and nature. So that's our overall mission. Our brief history, we really are very young. We were founded in January of 2018 by myself and Mary Birdsong and Laura Marie Koich, the three of us, as Sue already mentioned. We kind of got off to a running start, mostly because I had already been working for Audubon, Pennsylvania for a number of years prior to that in this area. And then they decided they were gonna close down this Northwest regional office. And I really felt strongly that I wanted many of these programs to continue. And hence we just jumped right in by starting a new organization to pick up those programs. And one of them was the songbird migration banding that of course has been conducted at Presque State Park for a very long time. 1960 is the first dates on record for banded birds here. But we had also, under Audubon, I'd been working on this piping plover monitoring, which started about 2009, at least by me and Audubon. And then the Marsh bird monitoring, the first year was 2011, and then there was a gap of some years, and then we started up again in 17, I believe. Last year, 2019, we started a new program of Waterbird monitoring, and also started a program providing Osprey platforms for utility companies and trying to encourage them and assist them in relocating Osprey nests that get built on utility poles. And then just this summer, we did our first season of a map station, which is banding in the summertime during the nesting season. So I'm going to touch on each of these 6 programs just to tell you a little bit about each of them, and we'll try not to spend too long in any one of them, although they're all very exciting in their own ways, and it's easy to go on and talk about each one of them for a long time. But to get started, I'm going to first talk about the songbird banding program that has been going on at Presque for a long time. Many of you may have seen us out there doing the banding or visit our banding, and it is a public engagement thing, and we love to have people visit. As long as there's no pandemic going on right now, we're not inviting people to join us at the moment. The basic process, though, is that during spring and fall migrations, we have tended to have more of an emphasis on spring migration here. Fall migration is a little bit less intense for us, being on the south side of Lake Erie. But the basic process is we put up these specialized nets called mist nets. We capture birds that fly into them. And then we do measuring and weighing and identifying of what we're catching, and we put little bands on their legs. These are aluminum bands, and most of our birds are using these very small sizes of bands. These other big ones are used for much larger birds, which we don't normally capture. But this is a type approach to monitoring bird populations and movements of birds that's been used for a very long time, and it really has provided tremendous wealth of information on birds and bird populations through the years. But it's also a great opportunity to get people involved. Oh yeah, the history. Presque Audubon has had a lot of involvement over the years through the Stulls in particular, but going way back to 1960, as I said, the first records at the bird banding lab where bird banding records are kept is from May 20th, 1960. So that's kind of our birthday date that we were going to celebrate this year, because that's exactly 60 years of banding. But May 20th, we were not banding this year because of COVID. So we missed out on our 60th anniversary of banding. And so the Lieberman family banded a lot of birds, and of course Bob Lieberman, and later, after he got his start here, he then later went and became the lead bird bander down at the Powder Mill bird banding lab managed by or owned by the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. And that is still an ongoing monitoring bird banding, very well-known, well-established bird banding station down in the Ligonier Valley. The Stulls, I'm sure many of you knew Gene and Jim Stull, and they were also very active in banding over the years, and they started approximately the same time in 1961. So this is this long history at Presque Isle of conducting seasonal migration banding, monitoring the numbers of each species, their condition, taking their measurements, contributing that to these larger data sets that are maintained at the bird banding lab in Maryland. Let's see, under my permit, we started in about 2007. Well, definitely in 2007. I remember it very well. And we started with the site that had been the traditional netting site by the previous banders down by the Niagara boat launch. But since then, we've moved up to Fry's Landing more of the time. We used to split time between the two sites. Now we're only at Fry's Landing. We have banded approximately that many birds, new bands, 120 species. And again, we're very open to visitors. It is a big part of the mission to engage people with birds. And by having birds in the hand, it is very easy for people to become enthralled really with the birds. And that's what we want to see. We want people to really care about the birds, because that ultimately leads to people supporting programs that protect habitat, supporting funding programs, supporting, understanding more about the birds and their needs, and understanding, protecting more of the environment. And as I said, this is Laura Marie. Anybody who's been out to the banding station since about 2015 would have met her, seen her. She's been the lead bander there with us since then. And again, this is the excitement of the banding station, is that can get all these different species. This is a big day we had. It was May 9th of last year, or 2019, yeah, last year. There were 45 species in one day. It was a huge day, and it's just very, very exciting to be able to see those birds in the hand, if just briefly, because we try to get them out quickly. But these are our future voters and our future conservationists here looking at the bird she's holding in her hand, and it's very exciting for people to have close encounters with these birds. And of course, the bird's health is our top concern, and we do prioritize that, and we do try to get everything turned around as quickly as we can, get them back out there foraging, because they are in migration. So I think that's all I had on the banding. There's a lot. I could give a whole talk and just all the cool recaptures we've had. We had a exciting case of a redstart that we had banded here, and somebody photographed it in Brazil. This is a female redstart, and they didn't actually recapture it, but they got enough different close-up photos of the band on its leg that they were able to read all the numbers on the band, which is how we know it was our bird. And so it's just very exciting when stuff like that happens. So a little tiny female redstart we banded here at Presque Isle flew to Brazil, under her own power. And that's what these birds do. They're just phenomenal. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mary. Mary is going to unmute herself and tell you a little bit about the piping plover monitoring that we've been doing, and the piping plovers at Presque Isle.
Good evening, everyone. As many of you know, the recent history of piping plovers in Erie is a short one. And I will be summarizing that history in just a minute, but let's take a look at some of the historical information first. Next slide.
Oops, sorry.
This is a historical, this map shows the historical distribution of piping plovers in the Great Lakes. There are 3 populations of piping plovers, and the Great Lakes is the only one that's now currently endangered. The other 2 are considered threatened. One is the Atlantic coast, one is the Great Plains population. As you can see, the species nested on all 5 Great Lakes, including Erie. In terms of nesting in Erie, the last time there was no nesting was sometime in the mid-1950s. By the 1980s, the species was diminished, unfortunately, to approximately 17 pairs, and were exclusively found around Sleeping Bear Dunes in Michigan, which is the little finger on the mitten. And the gull point population was then in 1984 listed as endangered, and conservation efforts began. Next slide. By 2016, the population had rebounded to about 77 pairs, and you can see that it's spread out once again along Lake Michigan, a little bit in Superior, and along Lake Huron and Ontario, but none in Lake Erie. And at Presque Isle, we were always seeing a few migrating plovers, but none ever stayed. And in 2016, however, one young male hung around all summer, which is always a good sign. And even though he never found a mate, we named him Junior because he arrived at Gull Point with another obviously older male. And he did turn out to be a first-year bird. He was born in Michigan, or hatched, sorry. He seemed to really like Gull Point, and that was a good sign that he might return. And in 2017, click, he did return, and a female arrived as well. And that was the beginning of a very historical moment. On May 20, she arrived on May 11th, and that was the beginning of the re-nesting of Gull Point by piping plovers. On May 23rd of that year, click,
where is it? There it is.
the first piping plover egg since the mid-1950s was found, and an exclosure was installed over the nest. And this was obviously a very historic moment. You can see the egg close up there, and you can see the egg under the exclosure, and it's called an exclosure because thank you. Because the adult plovers and the chicks, when they're hatched, can move back and forth through the exclosure, but predators can't get in. So they're actually exclosing predators from it. They're trying to keep predators out. They're not actually enclosing the plovers in there. Incredibly, in that same year, not many weeks later, another male and female piping plover arrived and settled down on a second nest, which was amazing because after all these years, we thought one nest was pretty exciting and 2 was just crazy talk. On June 25th, click. Thank you. On June 25th was our first hatch date. We had 2 adorable little piping plover chicks running around Gull Point. And that was indeed another historic moment. But on this hatch day, the second nest suffered a washout due to high water, and the eggs had to be rescued, and they were, and transferred to a captive rearing facility in Michigan, where they later hatched, and 2 of the 4 eggs were actually viable enough to hatch and produce chicks. Next slide. That first year, we fledged 4 chicks. 2 were from the wild population, with the wild fledged, and 2 were from the captive reared population. And in the subsequent years, 18, 19, and this year, we had 1 nest, and each nest had 4 chicks that fledged. And so in total, we have contributed 16 piping plover chicks to the Great Lakes population. The graph that you see on the right shows the growth in population from 1984 to when they were first listed as endangered, and until 2016. You can see there that the use of exclosures began in 1988, and the captive rearing program began in 1993. And you can see their exponential growth since then, thanks to the very careful and hard work of many people throughout the Great Lakes. In all, since 2016, the Great Lakes population as a whole has remained steady. This year, you can see at the bottom right, we had 79 nests, from 64 pairs, 87 wild fledged chicks, and 39 captive reared chicks that fledged. And like here, all of the Great Lakes have experienced high water levels this year, and that has reduced some of the habitat. So despite the fact that maybe we're a little bit lower than we have been in the past in terms of nests and pairs and the number of chicks, everyone considers the season a pretty good success, despite the circumstances of all the high water. And do you have another slide? Yes. You can see the two slides here. One is the historical distribution of piping plovers in the 2016 list. And as you can see, there were many, many nest sites along the Ohio, or along Lake Erie in Ontario, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. In 2016, there were still none. We finally were the ones that that was able to make it possible that there are piping plovers nesting on all 5 Great Lakes for the first time since the 1980s. And so we're very proud of that. We still have a long way to go in meeting our conservation goals, but for right now, Erie and Gull Point are proudly doing their part to bring back piping plovers. That's it.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Mary. Phew. That was the most detailed part. Mary worked on that part. That'll might have less detail on some of these subsequent parts. Okay, so far I've talked about 2 of the 6 programs, the bird banding, and now we've, and Mary has talked about piping plovers, so I'm gonna move on to one of our other more established monitoring programs was the marsh bird monitoring. Of course, Presque is a lot of marshes out there. And of course, there has been a lot of work on marsh restoration with controlling the dominance of the common reed, Phragmites australis. And so in 2011, was the first time we did, when I was with Audubon, we did surveys of marsh birds that were breeding at Presque. The thing about these marsh birds is they're, and anybody who's a bird watcher and has tried to see and find these birds knows that they're very secretive and they're hard to find. And they live in this habitat that's not very accessible by and large, and it's tough to get out there, see them. But you can hear them if you're out there at the right time of day and the right time of year. And they have a fairly short breeding season. But there is a, let me introduce some of the bird, the cast of characters. We do surveying for 8 species, and not all of them are found. This is a Virginia rail, so it's one of the ones that we do get regularly. The least bittern is a really cool, it's the smallest member of the heron family that we get around here, and it's it lives in these marshes, and again, it's hard to see them. The American bittern is one that's a little bit bigger, the bigger sibling of the least bittern. We still don't have them breeding at Presque yet, but they certainly do pass through on migration. American coot is another marsh breeding bird. They can be fairly conspicuous during some times of year, but during the breeding season, they tend to be pretty reclusive, actually. And another one is the common gallinule, which again, you have to be in the right habitat, in the right place, and then you'll see them. They may be a little bit more conspicuous than some of the other marsh birds. But there's been specialized protocols developed for doing these surveys of these birds because they don't get picked up on the roadside surveys like the breeding bird survey routes. They don't get seen often by e-birders. And so to find out how many there are and whether they're there or not, you do a specialized marsh bird monitoring protocol. And so since 2017, we've had Chris Lundberg shown to the right there in his kayak. He gets out there at dawn and visits a whole series of points that we have, like GPS coordinates that he gets to by kayak. And I'll show you the map of what those points all look like in a minute. But the idea is you have to go within 3 hours of dawn and you do an audio playback, which elicits a response by these birds. So if you play their song to them, they may think it's an intruder in their territory and call back. One of the kind of funny things is that many of these species actually call back to other marsh bird songs too, not just their own. So something gets excited by one playback, it may continue to respond to additional species. And as I said, we look for 8 of these species. We still don't have any records of American bittern, for example, during the breeding season, but we always play their call. We also have king rail, which there is sufficient habitat, I think, at Presque, but we still haven't gotten king rail there. And then the other ones I think we'll see them. Like I said, there's about 50 points. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try to play the call of one of these. Can you guys hear that? All right, that's the
I cannot.
No, okay, never mind. All right. I'm hearing it, but I wasn't sure it was going to work for you guys. All right, never mind. So here's the least bittern map. So the red circles are all the survey points from the 2019 survey that we conducted. I don't have a slide yet of the 2020 surveys, but we did revisit, or Chris, I should say this again. This is Chris doing this. And he's pretty good at it. He gets out there in the kayak and he goes to all these places. Those are 100-meter diameter circles, or sorry, radius circles. So each of them is 200 meters across. And the locations with the green diamonds are where we did find the least bitterns. And so there's actually quite a healthy population of least bitterns. Particularly in the Long Pond area, and then the big ponds, or there's all these little wetland areas in here have different names, but this is Niagara Pond over here. There's quite a few there. There was some right at the very beginning, right by Sarah's campground at the beginning of the peninsula there, ahead of the bay. And then there were actually some records out here in these smaller wetlands out here, and one right out at Gold Point. So this is our most abundant of this secretive marsh birds that we survey for. Additionally, though, we get records of Virginia rail, common gallinule, American coot, and pied-billed grebe. In different years, we've had different numbers of these. Some years we don't have a record of pied-billed grebes, for example. In this diagram, though, or this sort of an aerial survey map, aerial image, again, the red circles are the points that were surveyed, and then the colored shapes, the different shapes and different colors, that indicates where these different species were found in 2019. So this cluster here of Virginia rails at a place that's called Boathouse Pond, I believe. And then there was an additional one here at the tip of Niagara Pond. Common gallinules, they are found up here at the Cattail Islands, where that marsh, where the roosting of the martins was, and also at the head of the bay, but then here along Long Pond, and again over in Niagara Pond. The American cutes, we had last year, that's another one, we don't get it every year. And it seems like it ought to be breeding here, but it doesn't in very big numbers or very consistently. So there was just one last year there. And there was one record of a pied-billed grebe here in Niagara Pond. So that's the kind of thing we've figured out from the Marsh bird survey work. So that's yeah, that's all I had on the marsh birds. We're continuing to monitor them though, in part to see how they respond to the vegetation control work that's been ongoing for a number of years at the park. I do actually think that it's with more of the emergent vegetation being opened up, it creates a more diverse, more complex structures, or more patchy structures, so different types of marsh habitat in patches, and that does actually help these birds so that it's not one continuous large monotypic stand of a single species. Having it more broken up is definitely more favorable for a bigger array of these birds. So the Waterbird monitoring, this is something we only just started last year with the spring season in 2019. And Connor Vera is our main person who's been doing a lot of this. That's the sort of the core monitor, but this is one where we do invite volunteers to assist, to visit these locations and do duck counts for us. I'll just point out that I do say waterbird instead of waterfowl, because waterbirds includes some things that are not ducks and geese and swans. Waterfowl is a term that's used more for just the members of that family and ducks and geese. And so waterbirds also includes loons and grebes and some additional things like that. Well, the coots and the other things. So it's a little bit more inclusive of the term. We're trying to document the peak numbers of these birds. And of course, during the spring migration, when the waterfowl and waterbirds are heading northward, you know, we get just huge numbers of some of these species in Presque Isle Bay and in the wetlands at Presque Isle. And then in the fall, we also get quite a few. However, because of the waterfowl hunting or the duck hunting, we don't get the biggest peak numbers that we might otherwise see. But we established a set of 16 points that are shown by these little yellow marks, and try to get as many counts of total number of each species of ducks at each point. You know, we can use any number of counts. So any volunteer work is helpful here. We wanted, because what we end up doing is estimating waterbird use days out of that. And so we're estimating, interpolating. If we only get 1 count a week, we can use that. But it's better if we can get 7 counts a week from each site, or even two different counts per day, because we'll take an average of that. And then we'll estimate how many waterbirds used that site on that day. And then we can add up over the season which sites are getting most use, duck use days or waterbird use days, and which species are occurring where. So here's a quick look just across different species. And again, this is total number of waterbird use days. And so, for example, if I count 10 mallards at one site one day and I come back and I count 10 mallards there again the next day, that's a total of 20 waterbird use days, or mallard use days. So this is across all the different species, and I'm sorry, these are the 4-letter codes that I know are very confusing to people who don't have them all memorized. But I assure you it's much easier to write them all down if you're not having to spell them all out all the time. And so the canvasbacks, for example, is what that one is. American widgeon is what that one is, a redhead, and ringneck duck. The scaup, clearly we have a lot of lesser scaup, and then the scaup spa, that means we couldn't tell if they were lesser or greater. But you can see there's a little bit of, there is some difference between the spring in blue and the fall in red here. And so the numbers of canvasback redhead are bigger in the spring than in the fall. And again, this could be an effect of the hunting pressure on them. We do include gulls just because they're water birds too. We can't just discriminate against gulls all the time, right? And we do like to have, it's a sort of a philosophy of having long-term data sets where you can monitor something. If a disease comes along and wipes out all the ring-billed gulls, probably nobody will be that sad, but we will have had a historical record of how many there had been before they got wiped out. So even though they're very common now, we don't know that that's always going to be the case, and we do count them. So this is a waterbird use days across all species through the fall season, just to give you a sense of kind of the timing, the temporal pattern of it. And these get these big numbers later in the season. And this is a function of ice and icing up, I think, further north, pushing more things further south. So we've really just begun with this waterbird, looking at the waterbird patterns, and we do want it to be a longer term project and carry on for many years. So we'll have a long-term data set on how many different of each species there are in which locations at the park. And hopefully, again, we'll be able to see whether some of the marsh restoration is helping us bring up the numbers of some of the species that use are the dabbling ducks that are in the marshes more rather than the sea ducks. It'll be interesting to see over the years. So that's the waterbirds. I'll just try to hurry up here. I know it's getting a little late. One other project that just sort of came to us because there was a need, and the power companies really have problems, and this is definitely a case of human-bird interactions that need to get a little bit of management. Power companies have problems with ospreys building their nests on poles with live wires. They do cause what are called pole fires, interestingly enough. If a bunch of dead sticks are up on a wire or up on the crossbars of a power line like this, or they can start a fire, and they do, and there have been cases not around Erie so much, but down at the Moraine State Park, or not Moraine, the other one, Crawford County. I can't remember.
Mills?
No, the one near I-79 there, Lake Wilhelm, whatever that one's called. The Lake Wilhelm has a lot of ospreys around it, and there's been a couple of cases where a pole burned down. In one case, where young ospreys died as a result of the fire. But it's interesting because the power companies actually get fined by the day for each, or even the hour, actually, I think it is, for power outages. And any cause of a power outage is a problem for them and costs them money. And so this is a case down actually by Shenango Reservoir, where these power companies are putting up this new pole. This is the osprey nest that's potentially a problem. They put up a new pole right next door, they're putting our platform on top of that pole. This is a platform that that actually Sam Stahl built, and we provided there, and they're gonna actually, after they get it all set up like this, they're gonna put these two big Y-shaped braces up, and then they're gonna move all these sticks from up on top over there and put all those sticks right here. And this is a case where this was done last February of this year, and by the time the birds came back, everything was set for them. They had their new home was ready for them, and they moved right in, and they had successfully reared, I believe, 3 chicks that nest this year. And so this is a case of power company is willing to spend the money, and this is the first time I've ever seen dual bucket trucks. They had 2 separate bucket trucks there to do this work. I don't know why they needed 2, but they had 2, and so that was good. This is another case. This is one over by Pymatuning on East Lake Road, and this is a case where again, this is our platform, and this one now has the Y braces up on it. This pole actually burned down, caught a field of corn on fire, and so it was after the season, but the farmer sued First Energy. There was litigation on this particular nest because it caused damage to the farmer's crop when it burned. So they did replace the pole, and they put up this nice osprey nest on top, because that pair of ospreys was very, very persistent. They kept coming back year after year, which is what the osprey will do. So I just wanted to let people know, if you see a place where there's an osprey nest being built on an active utility line, let us know, because we now have contact with all the regional power companies, and we will prompt them to do something about it before it becomes a problem. And we will give them a platform like this to put up and talk to them about how to get it the best way to do that nest replacement in that location. So yeah, report it to us if you see something, and we'll try to make sure that the power company does take care of it, because they will. We talk them into it. So. Okay, the last program I'm going to talk about very briefly. Just this year, we started doing what's called Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship, or MAPS. And what it is, it's a mist netting program during the breeding season where you band birds and during the breeding season. So this is a continent-wide collaborative project that's been going on since 1989. It is managed out of the Institute for Bird Populations, which is in California. Everybody contributes their data to that giant data set. And it's really based on, most bird monitoring it's basically you're doing simple counts. You're counting how many ducks or how many marsh birds. But the neat thing about the MAPS program is we're estimating the vital rates for the population. So productivity, recruitment, how many young birds are coming into the population, and then the survival of adults, how many years they come back to breed in the same place. And so it's more sophisticated, I guess, if you could say, than just counting raw numbers of individuals. It's really looking at whether birds are able to reproduce successfully in an area, and how well they survive multiple years. This is just a little bit of a snapshot from the interactive map on the website there, showing how many map stations there are in this part of North America. All the green ones are active sites, and then the pink ones are ones that had been active at least sometime since 1989. And many of these stations have been going for many, many years. The one we're at is in Crawford County. It's actually on a piece of property owned by Allegheny College, east of Meadville, and it's called Bousson Environmental Research Preserve. And There had been a faculty member at Allegheny who's now left who had started it up, and he asked me if I could take it over. So I thought, yes, could do that. It's basically you go down, you miss net about once every 10 days through the summer, and catch and ban birds. So it's a little bit tricky this year with COVID, but this is our research station. He built this shed out there for supplies and in the middle of the woods. So this year we did 6 days, again, about 10 days apart from each other. Each day we did 6 hours of netting and 10 nets. During that time at the site, we caught 61 new birds and we had 16 recaptures. And some of the recaptures were birds that he had banded. He wasn't active in 2018. He had banded, I think, in 15, 16, 17. So this bird is one that had been caught by him and banded previously. I haven't really done much with the data yet. I haven't even submitted it yet. I need to get it submitted to the folks in California. But it's a neat collaborative project, again, with monitoring bird populations. And that's really what oops, there's the bird. Yep, I wanted to put the little circle around the band so you could see it. But monitoring bird populations is really what bird observatories do. And I didn't talk about bird observatories at the beginning, but they are all over the world. There's actually sort of a loose-knit international society of bird observatories. And Mary and Laura Marie and I went to a meeting, international meeting of bird observatories right before we started Erie Bird Observatory, just to talk to people and get ideas from them about how to run a bird observatory. But a lot of the projects that we do definitely involve partners and collaborators. And certainly at Presque, we work quite a lot with Presque State Park. And with the piping plovers, we work a lot with the Game Commission, the Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife Service. Western Pennsylvania Conservancy helps manage the vegetation out there. Cleveland Museum of Natural History has given us financial support for banding in particular. We've collaborated with these guys, Regional Science Consortium, and these are our partners with the Osprey work. And of course, Presque Audubon Society. I would definitely say that we have done various things with Presque Audubon, and we'll probably be continuing to do additional ones in the future. I think that's all. Any questions?
Hey, Sarah, this is Sue. I don't know if people want to just pop right in. What you could do is unmute yourself and then ask a question. Anybody want to do that? I think that might be easier to do, or
Okay.
yeah. Anybody have questions?
Yeah, hi, my name is Lon Myers. I'm chairman of the Allegheny Nature Pilgrimage. I live in the Philadelphia area. First, I'd like to commend both Mary and Sarah on their efforts, and it was a great presentation. I'm coming to Presque Isle on next Tuesday and Wednesday, and wondered if you have recommendations. I've certainly gone online as a birder from the Philadelphia area, having seen a few piping plovers last week or this week down at Cape May, coming to your area and wondered how I might take advantage of the bird observatory as well as other things that Presque Isle has to offer, and what your recommendations would be for a person that's arriving for a day or two next week.
Well, funny you should ask. We're actually very interested in talking to visiting birders to find out. We'd like to figure out what we can do more of and better of to make it a better visit for you as a birding visitor. So that is actually a project we're working on very actively right now. So when you get here, we'd like to talk to you about how long you're staying and anyway. But I would definitely say if you're in physically a good shape and able to walk a couple of miles through loose sand,
Yep.
I would definitely recommend going out to Gull Point.
Gull Point, okay.
Yes, it's a bit of a
Great.
trek, and
That's
I
fine.
don't.
We're all into a trek. So as
Yes.
I said, uh, uh, I've been out to Presque Isle just once, but we're from the eastern part of the state and haven't had an opportunity to really spend much time at Presque Isle. I'm a member of Presque Isle Audubon, as well as the other three sponsors of the Allegheny Nature Pilgrimage. So I certainly want to get out there and take advantage of what Presque Isle has to offer.
Great. Yeah. Well, I think you'll enjoy it. It's a very it's a little bit reminiscent of east of Atlantic coast sites,
Yep.
but also very different because it's not saline. there's no tides.
Exactly.
It's neat. It's not quite like anywhere else in my book. So I think you'll enjoy it.
Would you recommend I stop at Tom Ridge, the visitor center there first? What would you suggest?
They have limited hours right now, so do
Okay.
check on that. I believe they're only open Wednesday through Saturday for like 4 hours a day or something. So
Okay.
that might limit that, but they do have some good things to look at there. But yeah, send me an email. And I'd be happy to let you know more if you want.
And this is Sarah. Yeah, I'm actually
Yeah.
friends with you on Facebook, but I will
Okay.
I'll find your email somehow
Okay.
through the Presque Isle Audubon.
Yep,
Thank
that'll
you.
be great.
Any other questions? Just pop right in.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen, I guess. Can I do that?
I've got a question. Do you come out to the game lands in West Springfield very much at all? Is there any involvement out there?
I used to, when I worked for Audubon, I was out there some. I like going out there. I think it's great. It's a really interesting place. But I have not been out there recently, I have to admit. Yeah, Roderick, 330, yeah. No, it's a really cool place. I like it out there, but it's, I have not been out there recently, I'm afraid.
Is there any way to develop it as a place to,
Part of one of our projects actually is to try to put on our website a lot of birding tips for people who want to visit Erie County, because there are places other than Presque Isle that are absolutely, worth going to. And I definitely would put that as one of them. The cliffs looking out, or the bluffs, whatever you call them, looking out over the lake, that's a fabulous place for wintering groupings of juvenile eagles, for example. There's a lot of them there. There's big bank swallow colonies on those cliffs. And then there's a lot of those wetlands and the brush. I know that the Game Commission did a lot of habitat management there for woodcock in particular, to bring it into a young forest condition, because I know people were upset about that at the time, but a lot of the area had been abandoned farmland in the past. And so I don't know. Different people have different opinions on it, but there's a great mix of habitats out there. And there's white-eyed vireos. I remember seeing them singing away out there. There's some really cool stuff out there. Yeah.
have you considered getting like a DCNR grant? I don't know whether you could get students involved to work with you in terms of doing one of those, they call it, like, it's not range rider, but it's circuit rider, I think is the name of it, and to really do some stuff along.
Yeah, we do have DCNR funding actually right now, and I will continue to try to get more, because we do like to devote time and effort to getting it, and it does require people to be paid to really get things done sometimes. And so working on a website and promoting birding sites, or at least having a resource where people can seek information about where to go and to do what to look for in these different places, because it is the locals may know, but it's not widespread, and it's hard to figure out sometimes where to go to see what. And there's a lot of places to go, and you can see a lot of things in Erie County. And I think definitely Roderick is one of those places that it's a bit of a hidden treasure. But yeah.
Yeah, it really needs to be developed for,
Yeah.
for more than hunters, and even they're not up there very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
No problem. Thanks. Any other questions?
Well, this is Sue with a comment. I think that'd be a great project for Presque Audubon to work with you to help.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you guys, right? Because I think you have the pool of people who know a lot of these sites, and it's a matter of pulling it together and putting it into on a website and having some story maps or trail maps and things of all the different sites and putting it in one place so everybody has access to it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have any questions? Comments? Hey, Mary, you wanted to talk about cleanup tomorrow? Mary? Well,
Yeah. She's
Yeah,
on mute.
And before we do that, yes, but Carolyn Sturdivant had a question in the chat that has not been addressed yet.
Okay. Oh, there's 24 comments in the chat. Oh my, okay.
It's down near the bottom. Basically, the question is, how are your finances as support for your programs?
Okay, we do quite a lot of grant writing, or I do, but we, you know, you can't support everything off of grants. And the other thing is that when you only have grants, you're kind of constrained to delivering what the grant funder wants you to do. So we really need to have, as a small organization, we need to have a mix of funds, some of which is not as constrained as what grant funding is. So we do really appreciate our membership. We have memberships that you can help us out with, or any donation in any amount. We did very nicely with the Erie Gives Day this year, which was great, big boost for us. So we are a nonprofit 501c3, which can help some people in their tax, I don't know, less so now than it used to be, but that you can potentially deduct charitable donations off of your taxes. But yes, we have a mix of funding, I would say. We have some contract work with the Game Commission and DCNR for the piping plovers. Then we have grant funding for the Waterbirds and the Marsh Bird Monitoring. Banding is the spare change we find in our pockets supports the banding programs. It's a real mix. So any support is always welcome, though. Any other questions?
Well, if not, I invite anybody who hasn't signed up yet to meet us at the eastern end of Beach 10 tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for a international coastal cleanup of Gull Point. This is kind of near and dear to my heart because that's where I spend most of my spring and summer. And I like to see it clean, and it hasn't been cleaned in a number of years, and it needs a lot of TLC. So we have a good crew of about 14 or 15 people already, but if you are interested in lending a hand or two, please feel free to join us tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at the Beach 10 parking lot. We'll be down at the eastern end where the beginning of the path to Gull Point.
Trail. Yeah,
the trail, where the trail starts. So that's all I have.
I'm going to chime in and say you can come to Raccoon Creek Park too anytime between 9 and noon. I'll let you come at 10. So you
And you can drive all the way to that park, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, and I must say that if you do come tomorrow, of course, bring sturdy footwear, plenty of water, something to eat. Because it is a 3 to 4 mile walk, and out and back. Plus, we've scheduled it from 9 to 1 because of that walk time, and so you should bring plenty of nutritious food or snacks and lots of water. To make sure that you don't get dehydrated. And I would definitely recommend something for a jacket for wind, because it's going to be 15 to 20 mile an hour winds from the northeast tomorrow, which means it might be pretty cold. But nonetheless, it's going to be full of abundant sunshine. So it should be a good day all around. And you might get to see some shorebirds or a northern wheat ear.
We'll see if that thing makes another appearance. Only one person saw it.
Glad you're doing it out there. That's neat.
A lot of stuff washes out at Gull Point. It washes up. It's all kinds of stuff out there that needs to get picked up. People's docks wash up. We're not bringing in those docks, but things wash
Right.
up.
Sue, are you still with us?
I am still here, yes. So we might be ready to end the meeting then. And again, for everybody who so patiently waited from 7 to 7:15, I think I found what the problem was, and hopefully it won't happen again. I guess that's everything. If there's no more comments, if anybody wants to hang on the line
One more thing.
afterwards, go ahead.
Next month, the October program.
Oops.
The program next October 20th is we're going to watch the movie what's it called?
Columbia. It's Columbia, something about Columbia.
Yeah, the Birds and Music of Columbia. It was a movie about birding and the native music of Northern Columbia. It was actually produced by the Columbia Tourism Bureau, and I actually had made it. Was planning on showing it in March, but then we had to cancel our March meeting. And it's a lovely film. I've watched it, and I'm going to be streaming it from my computer, and we hope we won't have too many problems.
Oh, time will tell.
I think we're done.
I think we're done then. Okay, I'm going to hang on to the very end. I'll make sure everybody has signed out. Okay, thank you again. Your
Thank
program was
you.
wonderful. It was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Very much. Great program.
That was great, Sarah.
Yeah, did you want me to hang out to the, were you saying something you wanted me to hang out, or?
If you want to, yeah. No, I'm just, I think that was very, very interesting and fascinating. I had no idea of everything that your group did. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are familiar maybe with the banding and not as much with some of the other stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize that Chris spent all that time out in the marshes there too.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive actually. He's really good at hearing. He's got the ear for all those different weird squawks. They all make very a range. Oh, Chris, you're on. Hey, Chris, I'm talking about you. He's got his Lee Spittern picture for him. But,
I heard that too.
You've got a good ear for those little squawks and squeaks. Those birds make such weird sounds, and you can hear they make one little squeak, and you know what it is. So it's
amazing to me.
Yeah.
And we had 44 people.
Yeah, I have 40.
Yeah, 44.
Yeah.
And you thought there wouldn't be very many, and I thought I was going to tell you. I think it'll be. You may get more than you get in the in-person, because people can pop in online more easily. Yeah.
That's what I like because I live so far away. I can just plop down in front of my computer and that's it.
And you're there, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you can hear me.
Yes, hi,
It's
Ruth.
Ruth,
Hi. I love this. It was wonderful. And I can't
Good.
figure out how to get off.
Did you have trouble figuring out how to do it, Ruth?
Oh, I got on okay,
Okay, all right, good.
but I don't know how to get out.
There should be a place where you can say leave meeting. Well, eventually Sue will end it anyway and it'll get you out. But
Yeah.
Okay.
and the lower right-hand corner of the screen.
She's
Oh,
on
you're
a
not-
phone.
Yeah, you're on a phone, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
on a phone.
I don't know how to leave on a phone, but there should be a menu or something somewhere.
Should
Yeah.
be something. I got where all the participants are, and that's great because I can see everybody's name.
Yes.
Right.
But if I could get back to where I was, let's see, let's do this. Okay, I see Sue. I may find the way to get out.
You're trapped. Yeah. All right. Well,
Okay.
Dave got on too. All right. He made it work. All
Yeah,
right.
he's on.
Yeah.
Yay. Well,
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. I've got to go to bed and rest up for the big cleanup tomorrow. Okay,
Yeah.
Mary? Did you figure out the trash bags and gloves? Are you picking them up at the track?
I'm
or